Welcome class sa 6th lesson natin sa Earth Science. In this video, we will focus in the different types of fossil fuels and the way they formed. Let us first define fossil fuels. So these are energy sources that originated from biological materials. Unlike other sources of energy na nag-originate sa non-living materials like solar energy or geothermal energy, ang fossil fuels ay galing sa remnants ng living organisms. One thing na common sa iba't ibang uri ng fossil fuels is that they are mostly composed of hydrocarbons. These hydrocarbons is technically a compound of hydrogen and carbon. As we all know, organisms are mainly composed of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. These are the main composition of human cells, plant cells, and even the composition of different microorganisms. Pag namatay sila, these are also the things that is most likely to remain. However, due to different processes like exposure to heat and pressure, oxygen and nitrogen is released, and what remain is carbon and hydrogen, which will then make up our fossil fuels. There are three main types of fossil fuels. They are coal, oil, and natural gas. One of the main difference of these three is the material that were needed or are needed during their formation. Coal is mostly made up of remnants of plants, while oil and natural gas is made up of marine organisms and microorganisms. Another obvious difference between the three is the state of matter where it belongs to. Of course, we all know na yung coal ay solid, oil naman is liquid, and of course, gas for your natural gas. First discuss coal. Coal is considered a sedimentary rock, specifically a bioclastic sedimentary rock. Its color ranges from being brownish to black. It is safe to infer na kapag mas brownish pa ang coal, ibig sabihin low grade pa ito or less content pa ng carbon ang meron dito. As the grade of coal increases, ganun din yung amount of carbon na meron dito. So kumbaga, mas brown, mas less yung carbon, pero mas black or pure na black, technically, mas maraming carbon content ito. Coal normally appears as coal beds or seams. So in this picture, they are the layer embedded between the different layers of sedimentary rock. So ito, ang kulay black na to, is technically a coal seam or a coal bed. So it is in between different layers of rocks, which infers na nabuo ang iba't ibang layer in different period of time. We can say na mas nauna itong nabuo, then after some time nagkaroon ng sedimentation, kaya nandito siya, meron ditong sedimentary layer of rocks. And of course, another coal here, which we can say na mas younger as compared to this. So as you progress, mas pabata ng pabata yung coal deposit or yung coal bed na meron ka. Paano nga ba nabuo ang coal? We call the process of coal formation as coalification. And most of the coals that we have in our planet originated from the Carboniferous period, 360 to 290 million years ago. The name Carboniferous literally mean coal bearing. Kasi ito yung time na most of our land is covered with vegetation, and these plants will be the main ingredient in coalification. Another thing that I want you to remember about coalification is the effect of temperature and location. There are some types of coal kasi na kahit matagal nang nakabaon sa ilalim ng lupa, almost 300 years hindi pa rin ito nag-evolve into a higher grade of cold. This is because the location where they are is too cold. Somehow, di naging sapat yung init kasi kinontra ng lamig ng environment. This is common sa coal na makuha sa Moscow, Russia. Let us go to the actual process of coal formation. So it all starts with a swamp heavily covered by vegetation. Then, tectonic activity, earthquake, or flood due to a storm will raise the water level in the swamp, covering the vegetation with different sediments or debris and then killing it. This may happen over a long period of time and repeatedly, paulit-ulit. There will be disturbances dun sa vegetation, making it accumulate at the bottom of a body of water. Then matatabunan ng mud or sand, which we refer to as sedimentation. Sedimentation will then cover most of the plant debris. As I have said, this will happen over a long period of time and repeatedly. Then, because it is covered with mud and sand, plant debris will decompose slowly, mainly because the bacteria responsible for decomposition needs oxygen to live. Next is that pressure combined with heat will slowly cook the plant debris into coal. Cooked in a way that as plant debris is exposed to heat and pressure, chemical processes are happening. In a sense, nawawala o mas kumukonte yung ibang composition ng coal such as oxygen, nitrogen, and hydrogen to the point that coal will then be mostly composed of concentrated carbon, which somehow reaches the point na 90% ng coal ay carbon na lang. These are the different types of coals that we have. So we have lignite, subbituminous, bituminous coal, and anthracite. Take note that most references wouldn't include peat as a type of coal. For them, peat is just a clump of plant debris and other sediments. However, just like any other type of coal, nagagamit pa din bilang isang fuel ang peat. Di nga lang ganun ka-efficient yung energy na binibigay niya kasi siya yung pinakakaunti yung carbon content sa lima na ito. Another thing that I want you to remember is that all coal started somehow as peat. Unti-unti lang nag-evolve sila to lignite as their carbon content increases and their moisture decreases. Less than 60% ang carbon content ng peat, 65 to 70% naman ang lignite, 70 to 76% of subbituminous coal is carbon. Then, for bituminous coal, almost 86% nito ay carbon. And lastly, for anthracite, you have 86 to 98% pure carbon. And the remaining, of course, could be hydrogen, mostly hydrogen, uh, traces of oxygen, and even sulfur. Another thing, some references will say that your anthracite is no longer a sedimentary rock. It is a metamorphic rock na daw kasi sobrang tagal na ng heat and pressure na ibinigay sa anthracite at nag-metamorphize na to into a metamorphic rock. So, etong tatlo, we can say that these are sedimentary rocks. But for the peat, some resources will not agree na ito ay isang sedimentary rock. Some resources naman will say that it is a sedimentary rock. But what I want you to remember again is peat is just a precursor for these four types of coal. Yun, so tapos na tayo sa pag-discuss ng coal. Punta naman tayo ngayon sa isa pa or sa dalawa pang type ng fossil fuels, which is your oil and natural gas. We will discuss oil and natural gas as one kasi yung formation nila is technically the same. Halos sabay at iisang proseso yung dinadaanan para sa formation of oil and gas. The main difference is their main composition. Magkaiba yung amount ng carbon and hydrogen nilang dalawa, which is medyo, pag pinag-usapan natin yon ay atomic level na. The difference with the amount of carbon and hydrogen in them makes oil stay as liquid and your natural gas stay as gas. So the formation of oil and natural gas starts with the death of living organisms. Normally, if they die, it is either they are eaten by scavengers or bacteria. Kung hindi naman, they will oxidize. Kumbaga, magra-rust yung katawan ng isang living organisms as it is exposed to water or air. Yung makakatakas sa ganitong process will then be the precursor for oil and natural gas formation. Then, yung nakatakas na portion will then be transported to the depths of a body of water sa kilaliman ng tubig. Dito, it will be partly preserved. Katulad na nangyari sa coal, mai-slow down yung decomposition process ng dead organisms as it is mixed with clay, sand, and even dead microorganisms like planktons. As it is partially preserved and mixed with sediments, eventually mag-harden ito. This hardened material, which is the mixture of dead organisms and inorganic matter, will then be called as source rock. As the name implies, ito yung magiging source ng oil and gas natin. Then, the weight of the source rock will then slowly pushes it under the Earth's crust. Unti-unti lalalim yung pinagbabaunan ng source rock and will then be subjected to increasing heat and pressure. Mas maluluto pa kumbaga, and then the source rock will then be called, or the material inside that source rock will then be called as kerogen. So the kerogen will be the intermediate material for oil and gas. So a desired depth or yung gusto nating lalim is needed for kerogen to start releasing oil. Mainly because the deeper the source rock is, the hotter it becomes. To the point na magre-release na siya ng oil, and if continuously tumataas ang temperature ng oil, gas will then be produced. Sa madaling explanation, gas is produced if oil will then evaporate after constant exposure to heat. Other things that we must consider during the formation of oil and natural gas deposit is the presence of reservoir rock and cap rock. Reservoir rock is a porous, permeable rock that is capable of containing oil and gas deposits. So sa illustration na to, ito yung reservoir rock. Habang nagpo-produce yung kerogen na nasa source rock, dito pupunta yung oil and gas. So of course, dito sa baba, nandito yung oil and yung gas lulutang sa ibabaw ng reservoir rock. Capable ang reservoir rock na mag-contain ng oil and gas kasi nga butas-butas ito, porous ito, and permeable. Ibig sabihin kaya mag-penetrate ng fluid such as oil and gas dito. Now, Kung wala, kung reservoir rock lang ang meron ka, ang mangyayari is that mag-seep out, lalabas lang, aagos sa tubig yung oil and gas. Another thing that we must consider in the formation of oil and gas is your cap rock. As the name implies, ito yung takip. Takip sa reservoir rock mo. So, it will cover the reservoir rock kasi kung wala, your deposits will just seep out. Hindi mabubuo, you will not have enough amount for mining. Hindi mo to magiging source of energy. So unlike your reservoir rock na porous and permeable, your cap rock naman is impermeable. Ibig sabihin, it will give a tight seal sa reservoir rock para dun lang makontain ang oil and gas. So again, there will be little to no amount of oil dito sa cap rock. At most of the oil and gas will be here sa mismong reservoir rock. So as a summary, we have said that there are three different types of fossil fuels. You have your coal, oil, and natural gas. And of course, we have also said na lahat sila halos ay gawa or composed of hydrocarbons, a compound of hydrogen and carbon. Yun nga lang, yung coal is plant-based. Ibig sabihin, galing siya sa plant debris, kaya siya nabuo, and your oil and natural gas ay mula naman sa remnants ng living organisms, katulad ng marine organisms, malalaking animals, or microorganisms. And that is the end of this lesson. We will talk more about fossil fuels sa ating online class.